Okay, I'll call the meeting to order tonight at 7 p.m. This is the meeting of the Select Board, Monday, November 1st. With us is myself, the Vice Chair, Erin Underhill, and we have our clerk, Craig Schultz. We also have Karen DeMarzo, our Operations Manager, and Mike Kaczynski, our Town Administrator. It looks like, do we have any announcements from anybody to begin with?
I have one.
Okay.
On a personal note, I would just like to congratulate the boys varsity soccer team, right, Mr. Mullaney, for their, how do we say this? It's the small school Tri-Valley League champions. They are sharing first place with Medway, but this is the first time in school history that the boys will have a banner. Am I correct, Mr. Mullaney?
That is correct. It's awesome news, and thanks for sharing, Karen. They're ranked second in their division as we head into the tournament.
And they are very excited. I've got one at home, and so I thought I would share that because it's just it's nice to have some positive, exciting news. So if anyone's interested, there's lots of fun playoff games that will be coming up, hopefully.
Excellent.
That's all my news.
Okay, if there's nothing else for announcements, we will go to our first agenda item, which is the Veterans Day information and approval of proclamation. Mr. Moore, Mr. Gizin, that would be me and Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore.
Okay. The Millis Veterans Day event will go on November 11th, Veterans Day at 11 o'clock on Holbrook Square. It's where the monuments are, right across the street from the American Legion. And again, it starts at 11. It should go until about 12, but there's a lot of participants, more than last year. Obviously, the COVID restrictions have lifted. The Legion Post 208, obviously, the police department will be part of the ceremony. Millis High School Band, Boy Scout Troop 15, Girl Scouts, and Cub Scout Pack 115. And that's really all, unless anybody has any questions on I can give the sequence of events. But again, it's going to be 11 o'clock, and we picked that because the 11th hour of the 11th month of the year is when they hold Veterans Day ceremonies. So
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And we do have a proclamation that I can ask our clerk to read.
You'd say that. All right, here we go. Let me make it just a hair larger. Town of Millis Veterans Day 2021. In 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the first Veterans Day proclamation, calling our nation to pay appropriate homage to the veterans of all wars who have contributed so much to the preservation of this nation. Our nation has fought and continues to fight battles around the world. The words of that first proclamation still ring true. Let us solemnly remember the sacrifice of all those who fought so valiantly on the sea, in the air, and on the foreign shores to preserve our heritage of freedom, and let us reconsecrate ourselves to the task of promoting and enduring peace so that their efforts shall not have been in vain. Remember with somber and grateful hearts those men and women who have served in the United States of America with distinction and valor as sailors, soldiers, airmen, and Marines, and offer our sincere prayers for those who continue to defend the principles on which our nation was founded. The state of Massachusetts is a home to thousands of our nation's military families. We are proud to recognize our country's veterans and extend the appreciation of our citizens to those who wear the uniforms of the United States Armed Forces and serve on the front lines, preserving the freedom and liberty. We, the Town of Millis Select Board, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2021 as Veterans Day in the Town of Millis, and encourage all townspeople to observe and appreciate the sacrifice and contribution of our veterans who fought for peace and defended democracy in our land and abroad. in the town of Millis, given this 11th day of November 2021, signed by the select board.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion about Veterans Day?
Aaron,
Mhm.
I just will point out, I have a finance committee for work that day at the 11th hour. So
I'll be there.
so you might want to bone up on reading this a little bit first.
Sure, I'll be there. Happy to do it.
Unless something changes with it. But right now, that's when it's tentatively scheduled. I booked this thing out like auto
And then-
generated 6 months ago. So we'll see what happens. Maybe other people are going to say that it's Veterans Day and not be able to make it, but I am the least important person in the room. I'm the one presenting the information in that case, so I don't get to move it.
Okay.
Ms. Underhill, just, you need to take an actual vote
Oh,
I was going to
on,
make a motion.
to accept, yep.
okay, go ahead.
That we accept the proclamation as written. Shall I read it again?
No, it's good. That's good. Second, it's been moved and seconded to accept the proclamation as written. I will take a vote. Mr. Schultz
Aye.
and myself, aye, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next thing on the agenda, we have the review and approval of Avelina's applications for common victualler and entertainment licenses. Ms. Bray, I'm sorry,
Right, that
DeMarzo.
would be me. That's okay. Either one is fine. I do not see that they are attending and they don't really need to. I spoke to, so if you remember, Avelina's is taking the place, same location as the previous restaurant Rock and Coal down at the plaza. They have been working diligently on getting the restaurant ready. Their hope, I believe, is to open on Thanksgiving weekend. So they are really close. They have been through all the processes they need to with us, except for this common victualler license and entertainment license, which will be approved by you all. According to a building department, the fire chief and board of health, they are on track for all of their inspections and everything is looking good. So I would suggest approving both of these licenses contingent upon final inspections.
Yeah, I'll start by making a motion that we approve the common victual and the entertainment license for Sands Enterprise LLC, aka Avelina's Bar and Grill.
Second,
Now we can continue discussion and Karen won't yell at us for not making it.
it's been moved and seconded to, what would you say, accept or approve?
Approve.
Approve. You are
Approve.
officially approving the licenses. You are
Okay.
the local licensing authority.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the common victualler and entertainment license for S&S Enterprises LLC, aka Avelina's Bar and Grill. I will take a vote. Mr. Schultz
Yes.
and myself, yes. So that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have
You need to
discuss.
work on penmanship. I thought that said Sands S Enterprises, not S&S.
Maybe it does. Is it S&S or Sands?
I believe it's S&S.
Yeah, not
Okay.
passing grades on this application.
No, you're just granting the license. All good.
Okay, so now we have discuss annual fall town meeting warrant articles with Mr. Gazinski, Ms. Johnston, and Mr. Mullaney. Mr. Gazinski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just if we probably could start, if you don't mind, with Article 2, since Mr. Mullaney, the Superintendent of Schools, has joined us. The board had requested that he come before you this evening to talk a little bit about the proposal for a townwide social worker. As the board is aware, the Finance Committee chose not to recommend this item at this time. It was the indication of the majority of the board that they wanted some additional information, some additional framework presented to them as to how this position would be set up and exactly what would be the goals and the aim of the position. So since that time, I have had the opportunity to have a few discussions with the superintendent, and he can explain this evening a little bit about the genesis of this proposal, and maybe a path moving forward for this position. And I'd be happy to add in some comments myself, but with your indulgence, I'd like to ask if the superintendent could speak a little bit about this proposal.
Sure, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Kaczynski. Thanks, Ms. Underhill, Mr. Schultz. So the every 2 years, there's a youth risk behavior survey done by the Metro West Health Foundation. The last survey that we have data from is 2018. The kids in the middle and high school just took the survey again last week. It was off a year due to COVID. So the Metro West Health survey report for Millis High School in 2018 indicated that 32% of Millis High School students had used marijuana in their lifetime. 23% of Millis High School students reported using marijuana one or more times in the past 30 days. The National Institute on Drug Abuse warns that nearly 1/3 of individuals who use marijuana likely struggle with addiction to the drug, and that risk rises 4 to 7 times for those who start using before 18. Back to the Metro West report from 2018, 10% of students who use marijuana reported getting it from home with parent knowledge. 13% reported getting it from home without parent knowledge, and 13% reported getting it from someone with a medical marijuana card. 28% of Millis High School students reported smoking marijuana, 27% reported vaping marijuana, 17% ate or drank marijuana products, and 17% reported using it in concentrate form. So, kind of linking our request to the marijuana impact funds. Beyond this data, I've witnessed the impact marijuana can have on middle and high school students throughout my career. I've seen kids who were active, motivated students in the younger grades become indifferent and struggling students once they become addicted to marijuana. For those students, marijuana becomes the focal point of their lives, and they and their families suffer. Again, this is more reason why I believe a townwide social worker would be very helpful in addressing issues brought about by drug misuse. Currently, we have adjustment counselors in all our schools, and in the middle and high school, these adjustment counselors work with students who abuse or misuse substances. They try and help students use strategies or access services and programs to address substance use. They help them navigate their classes and peer relationships. They help their families by providing resources to counseling or treatment centers. Our adjustment counselors are unfortunately among our busiest employees in the school district. Many of the students and families involved in substance abuse need more help than our adjustment counselors can provide during the school day. A townwide social worker could work with our adjustment counselors and guidance counselors to examine school performance, family situations, substance abuse, and trauma history of students our adjustment counselors are working with. A townwide social worker could work in collaboration and coordinate services to students and families in need, referring and linking them to appropriate community-based services. A townwide social worker could assist families with follow-through and monitor progress as they access services. And a townwide social worker could conduct home visits, provide crisis intervention and assessment, and provide individual and family therapy. In addition to working with the schools, a townwide social worker could be a resource for families. The person in this position could provide referrals for services related to mental health, medical care, parenting, housing, and financial assistance. Townwide social worker could assist residents of all ages with applications for Social Security, disability, food stamps, fuel assistance, mass health insurance, and Department of Mental Health. In addition to providing services to students and their families, this worker could assist individuals with disabilities, low-income individuals and families, and the elderly. Townwide social worker could collaborate with community groups to be proactive in addressing the needs of the Millis community. The person in this position could also maintain lists of service providers and serve as a liaison to providers, state agencies, and hospitals. Just a quick list of neighboring towns that have social workers include Medway, Medfield, Franklin, Natick, Ashland, Needham, Westwood. As Mr. Kaczynski mentioned, we've had some discussions regarding this position, and I would look forward to working with him and other town department leaders to work on a job description and determine some of the logistical questions that the Finance Committee had, such as what percentage would the worker be for the school, what percentage of the position would be town side, et cetera. I would be happy to meet with any and all to help make this a reality for the town of Millis.
Okay, thank you. I do actually have a few questions. So some of what you mentioned here, and it's sort of off topic, but yet not. The one above this in Article 2 is mental health programs with link to substances. Is that completely unrelated to this?
It would be a different position. This would, the one above it is totally within the school.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I think Aaron was referring to the mental health programs for $5,000. Is that correct? There's one that's $40,000 a few lines up.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So one would be personnel and the other would be, bringing programs and services for students and for parent nights and educator training.
Okay. So would it be safe to say that do you have the information as to where this person would be housed and who they would report to and any of that yet? Or is that the information you'd have to hash out?
Yeah, that'd be to be worked out.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may, and Bob did an outstanding job covering that, much better than I could have. I would say that in discussions with Bob, I think, we were looking at probably doing this work over the winter, meeting with different town department heads. As I had mentioned earlier, I had spoken with a few of the department heads that deal often with our populations. And certainly, I think the senior director, the fire chief, in some ways, the police chief, the Board of Health, perhaps Veteran Services could use some assistance from this type of position. So I think if we had a few months to work through some of the particulars, the details, establish a job description, which outlines the role of the position and its goals, we could answer the questions, as Bob had mentioned, from the Finance Committee and ask for funding at the Springtown meeting. So I think that would be the approach at this point.
So my other sorry, one more. My last question is, and I'm not completely sure if Finance Committee brought this up, but there may have been concern about funding positions, which we're already doing here, but funding positions with this money. So if the HCA ends, what happens with the $60,000 for the townwide social worker? Is that going to be absorbed into somebody's budget?
Well, I could just say from my perspective on it, I would say that, as we approach the end of the HCA payments, whether that's, 4 years from now or further out than that, I think a policy decision will need to be made as to whether or not this is important enough to have the discussion to find the funds for it. But if it's not deemed that important to be able to do that, then the position would be eliminated. I certainly think that we're going to see how this goes on a year-to-year basis. This isn't necessarily something that even be here 3 or 4 years. We have to see how successful it is. We do think it will be very successful, but we are addressing this funding a year at a time.
Okay. Mr. Schultz?
Yeah, I had the same question about funding, but I see this as in my line of work, we get a lot of grants that help us start something up. And if they don't work and they don't come to fruition, we don't find them beneficial after 4 years or 5 years, then we don't continue funding. But if it was a huge success and it does work, it gives you the opportunity not to invest any of the town's money into a position that seems like it might make sense. But until we actually try it, we won't know. And then we'll know in 4 or 5 years, or when the money comes up for renegotiation, or longer if we get extensions on it. So I don't have a problem with it being on the list for future. I think it makes sense not to have it until we can answer all those basic questions. And clearly, it seems like that one should be proposed like school/municipal or something, or I think it needs to be broken as not purely school, because it's not a school activity. And there are people who are going to go through and add it up and say there's this much for the school and this much for the town. And that one really is a 50-50 split, and the way I see it, the way it was just described. So I agree, it makes no sense to have it on at this point until we can get those basic questions. Because I, as a person who supports the concept, until I know where they report and what their role is, I'm not going to spend the money until I know that. So if we can get back together for the spring, that would be hugely helpful. The other piece, and it relates to the motion book. I think the motion book, and the motion is made by the finance committee. And I think that if they voted not to include that, I think the motion is written wrong. I think the $244,000 and the $523,000 needs to be reduced by $60,000 for the motion they're going to read, unless I'm mistaken.
No, you're correct. That was going to be adjusted based upon the board's discussion this evening. So that was that will be updated for the finance committee on Wednesday.
But I was under the impression that the motion was made by the finance committee, and if they'd voted not to include it, then even whether we agreed or disagreed, the motion was going to be for $60,000 less.
I mean, wouldn't it not have to, though? I mean, if they're just making a recommendation, the warrant article is the warrant article. So, I mean, you could still phrase it that way. They just have to amend it.
I was actually reading the motion book,
Mhm.
and the motion that they read usually comes out with a motion.
Are you talking about the motions put together by the finance committee, or what I just sent out to you earlier today?
I thought that was the motion book that came out earlier today.
No, I just sent you the motions based upon the warrant articles as presented. So that will be
the final motion book then. No, my mistake.
No. Okay.
No, that will be finalized by Wednesday of this week.
Okay. Since it said motions on the top, I thought, oh, that's what it is. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I would just like to say in closing on this one, I guess, I personally certainly think it's a very valuable thing to do. I wish it was something that we could get sooner rather than later. But it is important to make sure everyone's questions are answered when approving such a thing for such an expense. So I really appreciate you looking into it for the spring.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Kaczynski, where would you like to go to next with this?
Well, my recommendation would be for the board, if the board members have any discussion or comments for the articles on the warrant, to make any adjustments or take any action in regards to them. I know we just discussed Article 2, but if there are other articles the board would like to discuss that the board may want to change or have a specific recommendation on for the town meeting, this would be the appropriate time. So I really leave it in your hands to determine which articles. There are 15. I imagine there might be some discussion on a couple of them.
Mhm.
I don't know if the board wants to discuss each one, because you've already been through them a number of times, but that's up.
Well, would it make sense then to do actually these two agenda items at once? Maybe we review each one and assign speaking roles at the same time. So it's not, we don't have to exhaustively go through each one, but.
Sure,
if
that
it-
makes sense
Okay,
Yeah,
to me.
okay. All right, so, sorry, I'm scrolling. I'm almost there. Okay, so the first one, the unpaid bills. This one's usually fairly standard. Craig, do you have any
no question.
questions or opinions? No, okay.
No questions.
All right, do you have any dying need to cover this one?
I don't need to discuss any more than it has. And if you're asking if I need to present it at town meeting, I have no need to speak to it, but if you'd like, I can.
Okay.
I don't.
We don't usually
think
have to
this
do
one
that.
could ever come to the select board speaking on.
Yeah,
Something's gone horribly wrong if we're trying to make the point.
all right. I will throw myself on one then. Okay, so Article 2. With the marijuana impact funds. Do you have questions or topics of discussion or preference to cover this?
I have no questions on it. I thought it was well expressed with the social worker bit. The rest of it's fairly self-explanatory. I do share the concern of any money we put into budgets has to be taken into account at some point. So I do like seeing it used for things like the teen program coordinator, even though it's a position, it's a short-term position that can be discontinued, or the studies, the after-school activities, extended day program, all of those things. I like that use, because if the money does go away, then it doesn't burden our budget. But no, I have no questions or thoughts on this beyond that. And if you'd like me to speak on it, I can. If not, I don't need to. Typically, I mean, it's always been typical. I thought that the chair, at least in the finance committee world, always took the budget items, but Pete won't be there, so.
Okay, all right. All right, I guess I'll go with number 2 as well then. All right, number 3, the capital items.
Sorry, Erin, you just said
Yes.
you were gonna do?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
it's okay.
Can I ask a question on 2?
Yes.
The police cruiser, that's an outright purchase, not another lease. I thought we had moved towards leasing those and leasing school buses. We
Oh,
can't
this
take
is
it out.
capital, you mean?
Yeah,
Number 3, okay, yep.
This was put forward as a purchase and not a lease.
okay.
We do have sufficient funds to
Yeah.
cover this, but that was the idea as part of Article 3. Is everything in Article 3 would be an outright purchase? So yes, that would be put
I would
forward.
just like to- I'm not going to object to that now, but I'd like to get on the same page. So we're leasing or purchasing consistently. We're mixing and matching now, and I don't have a preference to either. I just would like it to be consistently lease vehicles or consistently purchase police vehicles. We got some that are on leases now, so. Other than that, no questions or comments. I like the list. I like the picnic benches. I was going to use as a rounding number. I didn't think there'd be a couple 100,000 left after we included it. I can speak to that one if you want, Aaron, or if you
Sure.
want. I'm trying not to give them all to you.
I'll share. You can have this one.
Let's give this one to Pete.
Yeah. Okay, Article 4 is the PFAS, which I'm happy to speak to. In terms of tonight, is there some discussion that you would like to have on this? Because we did talk last time about what it would cost the ratepayers.
Right. That's the question I have. And assuming that, and I think that I got a couple questions. You mind to ask?
Mhm.
I'll put them together.
Sure.
It's $5.6 million total,
Mhm.
but there's a $2.4 million. Is that an ARPA grant?
Yes.
Yes.
So that 2.4 million ARPA is likely, positive, certain, hopeful? What category do we put that in?
I would say extremely likely.
Okay. Call that an 8 out of 10 because I never give anything a 10 out of 10 until I have the check. Okay.
Well, I never give the federal government a 10 out of 10. So that's the only reason I don't say a 10 out of 10.
If I've got a $2.4 million check in my hand, that's a 10 out of 10. But so that means we're looking at borrowing between 3.2 and 5.6. So if we could have the rate breakdown basically on that, that'd be a 30-year borrowing.
Well, I
Okay.
actually have a rate breakdown right here for 20-year borrowing.
Yeah.
So if the full 5.6 were to be covered by the ratepayers, the cost per ratepayer would be just over $2,000. And if paid over 20 years, it would be 102 or so per year per ratepayer.
Actually, it would start at 102 and ramp down, wouldn't it? With municipal borrowing, it reduces as you pay principal.
It depends on the type of borrowing payback schedule you get, but yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, was that for the full 5.6 or was that the 3.4?
Yes. Nope, that's
Okay.
the full 5.6. For the
So that would be a worst case scenario.
Mhm.
That would be if for some reason, which I don't expect, the federal grants to not be available for this,
Right.
which again, it'd be very unlikely.
And then for the 3.2 million, if the 2.4 is applied, then the average cost would be 1,577 over for the total amount. If paid over 20 years, it would be 79 per year per ratepayer.
Estimates that were very close. Okay, I went 30 years on it, but
Mm.
all right.
Yes.
So really, we're talking about the first year between $80 and $100 for the ratepayer, and then falling potentially each year after that for the next 20 years, but no worse than that for the life of
Right.
it.
Well, I
And
will point out as well, if I could, that there will be other possible opportunities for additional grants. I know that the chairman's been working very hard in contacting Congressman Auchincloss as well as our state delegation to really raise the issue as the state is receiving over $5 billion in state aid. And in federal funds. And we are looking to ask them to take at least some portion of that to help mitigate this issue, which has been really laid upon us because of a new determination by the DEP, which is much stricter than the federal guidelines. So it is an issue that we cannot guarantee any additional money beyond the 2.4 million, but it's something that is being actively worked on. And as most people know who watch the news, Congress is still working on some additional funding in aid packages, which could help as well. But again, I would kind of couch this as a worst case scenario. And I believe that those numbers could potentially drop based on additional grant funds.
thank you. And I'd also like to suggest that as new growth comes in and we have extra monies available, I wouldn't be objectionable to seeing some of that money used to use that money basically to pay down the debt instead of burdening the ratepayer with it. I think we have to be thoughtful about how we use that new growth money. I like the idea of reducing debt with it or doing capital improvements with it. I don't like the idea of rolling it all into budgets because I'd like it to last for a while. So, as we look at that opportunity, I'd like to consider that as another possibility because, I'd like to, again, minimize the cost to the ratepayer as much as possible. And if we do have money that isn't baked into budgets already, new available funds, we'll know that as we start doing the planning for next year. Would there be a mechanism for us to just vote to pay off, call it 300,000 or 200,000 if we had extra funds available at that point each year? Or
well, there's certainly, I would defer that question ultimately to the town treasurer, but I would say until we do a permanent bit of bonding, as long as we're issuing bans, there are always opportunities to pay early once before we finalize the borrowing into a bond, that's when we'd have to take a good look at that to see if we can reduce the final bond by, finding other funds to reduce that bond.
And then money could be set aside to pay that bond without going to the Water Enterprise Fund if we chose, as after it's bonded. I would imagine. Yeah.
That's my understanding. That certainly could be possible to do that.
Okay.
I don't think the town would be locked in as far as the funding source. I think there are, again, I would defer that to the treasurer. There may be some limits on early payments once the bond is established, but they would not limit us on how that was funded from the town.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. That was my assumption of it, that you can pay it back with whatever money you have, and maybe not early pay it, but make the annual payments if we needed to. Okay.
Any other questions?
You're taking that one, Aaron? Did you say?
Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Bold move.
I know. All right, back over here. All right, now just to pause here. Craig, you mentioned something at the last meeting in terms of like a select board recommendation on some of these. I don't know if you want to discuss that again. I personally think most of these really don't need that.
No, as I said, I think the only ones that needed it were the ones like Article 2, where we threw the kitchen sink in. We went all the way down to the medium priorities without any knowledge of what free cash would be. So had free cash come in lower, we would have then had to say, what don't we want to recommend? And the finance committee could have a different list of what they don't.
Okay. Okay.
So since we have enough money and there's really nothing on here that I object to, Article 3, the capital article. Yeah, there's nothing on there I object to. I think that's fine. Article 4, I think the discussion we just had about exact amounts needs to be had earlier, but I think that was the only reason that I was hesitant on it. Because if this came back and we'd said it was, factor of 10 higher than, this 100 then that's a real issue. But until we have real numbers associated with it, it's kind of hard to take a vote for it, even though we knew we had to put it on the warrant.
Okay.
And then as we move through to the ambulance, I have a question. So no, I do agree that by putting them on the warrant, we've given our tacit approval to them. I think that is correct. And
Okay.
sometimes we have actual funding that has to be voted. That would be when we have to make the decision on what we vote, in my opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fair. All right.
Yeah.
So then 5.
Article 5, I had a question on that one, and I think it was answered either in an email or in a conversation or at the meeting. So I can't recall. There was a string of things that I was working on. But when we put in the new paramedics, the EMT positions rather, the money that those were bringing in, we're supposed to pay for the ambulances, but now we're taking that money and using it elsewhere. So we have to borrow for the ambulance. Can we say pretty categorically, or how certain are we that this will be the last ambulance we have to borrow for, barring a catastrophic failure of an ambulance for its, an untimely replacement, Is this a routine replacement that will have to be planned?
Yeah, I would say it's fairly certain. I think certainly that's the plan, because when the federal grant runs out, as the board knows, we received a very generous grant that paid for 100% of the salary costs of and the health insurance of the new paramedics for a period of 3 years. However, and they are generating revenue for that account by their work with the ambulance, the rescue. In our discussions, we felt it was prudent to build up that account to make sure that we could properly fund the costs of those 4 new paramedics once the federal grant runs out. And so we were a little concerned about using that $370,000 from those funds but we feel fairly confident that the funds will grow to the extent that this should be the last ambulance. Forgoing any non-expected issues, this should be the last ambulance we'll need to fund in this manner outside of the ambulance fund. So Carol, I don't know if Carol has any other comments on that. She's got her finger on the pulse of that fund pretty well, so.
No, Mr. Kaczynski, you said it correctly. Right now, we do use money from the ambulance revolving fund to fund the general fund operating budget, and that covers for EMTs that are currently working the ambulance service. Right now, as Mr. Kaczynski said on the SAFER grant with the firefighters that we have, it does cover their benefits and it does cover their base pay, but it does not cover for their overtime. So the ambulance revolving fund is covering any overtime for the additional EMTs at this point. And then we will have, or should have, we projected it out that we will have enough funding to cover for the additional EMTs as well as an ambulance in the future.
Okay, how long does an ambulance typically last? When we'll be looking to replace ambulance 1 or 2, or I guess this is A1, so A2 and A1.
I'm thinking, is it 15 years?
Yeah, I believe the industry standard is 5 to 10 years. However, we through our fire department make our vehicles last between 10 to 15 years.
And A1 is the new one we're buying, which we'll get in about a year. So that's negative 1 year old. And A2 is, how old is that one? It's just a few years old itself. Isn't it?
I don't have the data that right in front of me.
Okay, well, we'll put that up later. I don't think it's that old.
Yeah, but yeah, so this would again, once it's done and some, delivered to the town, it would be our primary rescue. But as the fire chief has mentioned, our second rescue goes out more and more every year. So there is, again, that the strong need is our primary ambulance is getting a little old to be the primary, and our secondary ambulance, the repairs on that are becoming burdensome from a financial perspective. So I would say that yes, there'd be a decent period of time before we need to seek another rescue, another ambulance after this. I would probably defer to the chief to give an exact estimate, but.
That's all I had on that one. Would you like to take that one as well, Aaron?
Sure.
Okay.
And number 6 is the fire engine. Any questions or discussion on that one?
No, I'm okay with that one, I think. I don't have any questions on it.
Do you want to take that one too, since you're all fire and rescue?
I'll walk next door and talk to the chief.
Let's see. So Article 7 is the senior tax work program. Any questions or discussion? No. I am indifferent. Do you want it or do you want me to take it?
I'll take it.
Okay.
We're trying to get what, about 7 or 8 each?
Yeah. All right. So then 8 is the stormwater regulation amendment.
It's got you written all over it because you're doing water treatment already.
Yeah, I guess I'll go all in, right? All right. So
Or actually, if you'd like, I can do that one too. I'm pretty familiar with that one. I just hear the stormwater and I take 2 steps backwards.
all right, how familiar are you? How involved have you been with this?
I haven't been intimately involved, but I can certainly ask a lot more questions. I do know the reasons for it and the impact that it should have. I mean, I know the reasoning behind it, and I know the other towns are doing it. I know all that other side of it, but I can have a conversation depending if you like it or not.
No, that's okay. I'll take it. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't have it cold, but I could figure it out.
Okay. Me too.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Article 9 is the charter changes. Do we
Would you
have any
like-
current discussion?
Would you? Yeah, I don't know. I'm happy with the way it is. I believe right now we got the legal opinion, so that all
Mhm.
that it's correct. So that all looks good.
Just to inform the board, there was a discussion this afternoon with the town moderator and Kathy Smith from the clerk's office, as well as myself and town council. And Karen was on as well. We did discuss Article 9, and that the town moderator does plan to break that up into the sections. And the town council was giving her guidance on that. And so that should be all set to break up into whether that be 4 or 5 sections for votes at the town meeting based on the different pieces of it. And the moderator feels it's too large an article in order to try to deal with all the aspects of it at once, so that it makes sense to break it up and to have debate and discussion on each section of the article.
Okay. And I guess I do have a question on that one then. That one, and everyone's fine with going in the order in which we're going with Article 9, like starting off with the nope, hold on, I scrolled. I'm sorry.
First, then finance.
It's not actually in numerical order. The town clerk item is taken first.
Mhm.
And the reason behind that is because if that were not to pass, it does have some impact on some of the other items. So that would allow for necessary amendments to other sections of that article. That is the only item that would have ripple effects on the other sections. So,
And this is a 2/3 vote, so would each section be a 2/3 vote then?
that's correct. Each
Okay.
section would require a 2/3 vote.
Okay,
And then mechanically, each section that got a 2/3 vote would be put together into the final presentation to the legislature.
There would not be a final vote. Each section
But that's what I'm saying. Each of the sections that got a 2/3 yes would be then
would
put into
end
the
up being
final
sent to the
submission.
state legislature. That's correct.
Okay, that's what I was checking. Okay. I don't mind taking this one. I was on the committee that helped draft language for it, but if you feel strongly either way, I can.
oh, that's
defer.
true. You do have that background, so
And per that, we got an email.
have at it.
The question, do you want me to respond to the question we got today or?
I'm gonna talk to him tomorrow morning. If I don't do a good job, then you're up.
Well,
How's that?
so to avoid any deliberations, send me a smiley face or a frowny face in a text. I know if I think it's all.
Or help? Okay.
Take pictures on deliberation.
All right, let's see. All right, so Craig, you have 9. 10 is the tree trimming.
They took one down at the very edge of my property.
So,
Last one that went. So thrilled. Come down during the storm.
so I don't think there's anything really big to discuss here. I can take this one since we're gonna be even now. Let's see. All right, 11 is a snow and ice deficit.
Either way with that one, I
Okay,
don't have any questions and I don't have any preference.
all right, I'll give that one to you.
Okay.
12. The unemployment account. Yeah, I can't imagine that this needs much discussion.
I don't have a question about that one. At $25,000, low dollar amount and pretty much something everybody understands. So.
Mhm. I know in the past you've spoken in past town meetings, you've spoken a lot on issues related to Articles 12 and 13 here. Is there one that you'd prefer to cover?
I'm thrilled we're funding OPEB, just out of selfishness. I'd like to fund OPEB.
Okay.
But
Okay.
because all those years I've said dismissed for lack of funds, it'd be nice to be able to say, if it comes to that we're funding it.
Okay.
So you'll take unemployment, I'll take OPEB.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so that brings us to 14. This is the special injury leave indemnity.
Any questions on?
I don't know
Just-
yet. Hold on.
Just for those that are watching, just to
Yeah.
give a 30-second overview of this. Under chapter 41, section 111F, any police officer or firefighter who is injured on duty, when they go off duty related to a work-related accident, they are paid at 100% of their pay. We do have an insurance policy that provides the town a certain amount of money to assist with that, but it does not cover 100% of the costs of that employee being out. And it also doesn't cover any necessary filling of that position. And oftentimes to meet the minimum staffing requirements of that particular shift, whether it be for the police or for the fire, that's where the overtime costs go up dramatically. This fund, if established and eventually funded, would help address that issue and would lead to less need to have transfers from the reserve fund or from special town meetings to address overages related to that. So it's really like a stabilization account for chapter 111F related costs.
Okay, and at this time, we're not looking to actually put
we'd
any
be look-
money in it?
Correct. We'd be looking to fund it with a certain amount of funds in the spring if funds are available. That would be the plan.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want that one, or do you want that one and rescind balance, or do you want rescind balance? I'll let you.
I'll give you 14 and I'll rescind the balance. How's that?
Aren't you sweet? Thank you. It's easy because there's no funding. It only gets funding.
People should like that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions or discussions or anything else that we need to do at this point, Mr. Kaczynski?
Not in regards to the warrant. I believe we're all set.
Okay.
It's a highly
All
effective
right.
program, Aaron. Good job.
It's 7:52, I might add.
Yeah. Just one more thing in regards to the warrant, or the town meeting, Madam Chair, and that's just
Yes.
the procedures.
Yes.
As far as the town meeting procedures, as I've mentioned, we've had a series of meetings with the different officials involved with town meeting. We've met with the obviously the moderator, representatives of the Board of Health, election staff, school staff, police chief, the Millis community media officials and other town officials in preparation for the meeting. There is information posted on the town's website in regards to the procedures for town meeting. So if anyone has any questions or is wondering about those procedures, they are posted on the town's website. Certainly we hope for a large turnout and interest in the town meeting. We will have 2 rooms at the town meeting. They're going to be the auditorium and the cafeteria. So we've already set everything up with the sound system, the seating, and the staffing needed to accommodate that. Just wanted to let everyone who may see this meeting between now and then know. And then again, there's a lot of good information on the town's website if people want to look at the warrant or the finance committee's information and the town moderator's information about the procedures of the town meeting, especially since we're still experiencing and going through the COVID pandemic. Hopefully this will be one of the last meetings we'll have to be dealing with this in this way, but we're getting more practice at it, and hopefully it'll be a very smooth process at the town meeting.
Great. Questions?
Nope.
Okay.
And there are no draft minutes for you to approve at this time. There are draft minutes, but they just didn't get to you yet.
Oh, okay.
We'll come to the next meeting.
Prior to the final motion, I'd like to point out one more time, December 6th, I have a board commitment, so I will not be at this board.
Okay.
The work board, okay? So I'm not saying reschedule, I'm just saying don't wait up for me, okay?
All right, we will not.
Okay.
All right. Is there anything else for tonight from anybody? No?
Nope. I'll just note that your next meeting, it will be live and in person, and it will be at the Millis High School in the library at 6:30 Monday.
Okay. Excellent. All right, then.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second and pull the board. Mr. Schultz,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So we are all done for today. Thank you very much for everybody that has watched and participated. Much appreciated. And we'll see you at town meeting.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.